NYCFC was first officially announced in 2013 as Major League Soccer's 20th franchise, based in New York City. The club was created through a partnership between City Football Group and the Yankee Global Enterprises, the owners of the New York Yankees. With City Football Group already owning multiple teams including Manchester City, Palermo, and Girona, they had the experience and resources to get the team started on the right track. Their goal? To take over the football market in the biggest city in the United States. NYCFC played its inaugural season in 2015, with the Yankee Stadium serving as their home ground, which thankfully will be changing in 2027. The club's first ever signing was David Villa, the club's first captain and all-time leading scorer. He immediately went on a 4-game loan to Melbourne City, while the team waited for the 2015 MLS season to start. After signing David Villa, the team announced they signed Chelsea's Frank Lampard as their second player. They then followed up by signing Andrea Pirlo from Juventus, completing their trio of English, Spanish, and Italian stars. The new squad was bolstered by Oregon State forward Gary Shelton when they chose him with the second overall pick in the 2015 MLS Super Draft. The club's first preseason started on a high note as they dominated their exhibition match against Scotland's St Mirren 2-0, with captain David Villa scoring the club's first goal. The club lost out on its first bit of hardware, as after having a slow start in the Carolina Challenge Cup, tying with Orlando City FC and losing to Houston Dynamo, they would ultimately finish in second and miss out on their first chance at hardware. NYCFC didn't let this get to them, as they started their first ever season, tying with fellow expansion team Orlando City SC and winning their first home game 2-0 against New England Revolution. Unfortunately, after this, New York would go on to tie or lose their next 11 league matches, until almost 3 months after their home win, they went and beat Philadelphia Union 2-1 away. After this, the team continued the rest of the season with 8 wins, 10 losses, and 2 ties, with a final record of 10 wins, 7 draws, and 17 losses, way below what the team expected going into the year and eliminating them from the league playoffs. But they did have one more chance at hardware this season with the US Open Cup, where they lost in penalties to New York Cosmos, a club that no longer exists at the time of this recording. After a subpar season, the club let go of its first coach, Jason Kreis, and appointed Patrick Vieira a week later as his replacement. Vieira came in and introduced his own style of play, a free-flowing, attacking, press-based system. The club wasn't done making moves, as during the preseason, they traded for Jack Harrison, the first overall pick in the 2016 MLS Super Draft. Harrison came in and became a key part of Vieira's formation, pairing with captain David Villa. After a lackluster 2015 campaign, Villa was able to regain his form with the help of his team to secure the 2016 MLS League MVP with 23 goals in 33 games. Led by the new duo of Villa and Harrison, the club made the MLS playoffs for the first time, unfortunately losing to Toronto FC 7-0 on aggregate. The 2017 preseason started with the club parting ways with their second ever player, Frank Lampard, and bringing in Argentine midfielder Maximiliano Morales and Alexander Ring from Kaiserslautern. Even though the squad had their best season so far, going 16-9-9, they still went home with no hardware, losing the US Open Cup in June to rival New York Red Bulls, the Supporter Shield to Toronto FC, and were eliminated in the MLS Cup semifinals 4-3 on aggregate to Columbus Crew SC. The next 3 years would see the club go through many massive changes. In 2018, the club would see 10 senior players depart, including Andrea, Pirlo, promoted Jonathan Lewis and James Sander, signed Jesus Medina, and extended Ronald Maturita, the 2016 Defensive Player of the Year. The club then went on to bring in Anton Tinnerholm and multiple international signings and loans to round out the team. However, the club would receive devastating news, as Coach Vieira would leave to coach French League One club Nice, bringing multiple assistant coaches with him. The club scrambled to find a replacement, eventually settling on Dominic Torrent, longtime assistant to Pep Guardiola. After a strong initial start led by Torrent, the club eventually went on to have a period of 1 win in 2 months, barely qualifying for the playoffs, where they lost in the second round to Atlanta United FC. However, one of the best things to happen to the club happened this season, as the team would bring in youth prospect Castellanos on loan. After the turmoil of the previous season, the club decided to decline several player options, including first-team members Maxime Chanot and Rodney Wallace, along with fan favorite Tommy McNamara. Along with these players, the club parted ways with their star David Villa, with Alexander Ring named the club's new captain. Even with all the talent moving away from the team, there was still hope, Castellanos' loan deal was made permanent, along with a new batch of players to reinvigorate the team, including Romanian Alexandru Mitrita, for a rumored transfer fee of $9.1 million, making him one of the most expensive transfer fees if true. However, even with all the changes, New York once again failed in the playoffs, losing to Toronto FC despite ending with a club best record of 18-6-10. After another disappointing playoffs, the club decided to part ways with head coach Trent, eventually deciding to replace him with Ronnie Delia and giving Delia a 3-year contract. The 2020 season introduced a new challenge to the club, as it was the first time the team qualified for the CONCACAF Champions League. However, due to the pandemic, the MLS season and the CONCACAF was postponed. Unfortunately, New York ended up losing both in the quarterfinals. With the 2021 season looming, the club needed to make some major changes. After the departure of Captain Alexander Ring, NYCFC had many of their other starters leave in the offseason or sent them away on loan. The club started their new wave of signings with Malt Amundsen with a reported fee of $1.6 million. The club also signed goalkeeper Cody Mizzle, brought Chris Gloucester back to the MLS, signed first-team regular Alfredo Morales, and brought in the Brazilian duo that included Thales Magno. With all the new acquisitions, it took the club a while to get their footing, as they ended August 4th place in the Eastern Conference. The team continued to struggle through September and October, as the club won just one game and drew on 4, leading into their final 4 games of the season. With the team currently not even qualifying for the playoffs, it would take a miracle to get them back in. Just as the season seemed lost, Castellanos led the team in a 6-0 win in their next match and helped the club win 3 of their final 4 games, barely making the playoff spot for the MLS Cup with a record of 14, 11, and 9. Unlike past years, NYCFC entered the playoffs and continued their end-of-season magic, beating Atlanta United 2-0 at home, then winning in penalties over Supporters Shield winners New England Revolution in the Eastern Conference semifinals. With some amazing saves by Sean Johnson, the club secured its first penalty shootout win and its first MLS playoff win on the road. In the Eastern Conference Finals, New York managed to win 2-1 without the help of Castellanos, who received a red card in the last match. They managed to win with a goal in the 88th minute by that year's acquisition, Thales Magno. The club finally made it to the MLS Cup and faced off against the Portland Timbers away at Providence Park in Portland. With the miracle run the team had so far and their 1-0 lead going into the 90th minute, New York finally felt like it was their moment. It was their cup to win. However, tragedy struck, as in the 94th minute, Portland's Felipe Moore scored a dramatic equalizer to send the game into extra time. After a scoreless extra time, New York and Portland went into a shootout for the MLS Cup. New York, a team who struggled most of the season, who only won once on the road in playoffs and once in penalties, had to now play on the road in penalties against a team who from the end of August went 13-1-3 and were in peak form. It all came down to this. Can New York pull out another miracle, or would they lose to the team who seemed guaranteed to lift the cup? Castellanos started by blasting the first penalty by Portland's goalkeeper, putting NYC up 1-0. Sean Johnson then went to make 2 diving saves to keep NYC up 1-0 going into the 3rd round of penalty kicks. Next, Morales, a key member of the club since Vieira was coach, scored an emotional goal to put New York up 2-0. However, Portland was not done, as Santiago Moreno first broke through Sean Johnson's incredible defense, bringing it to 2-1. Then, after Magno continued his amazing cup run with a perfectly placed shot, Christian Paredes blasted a shot into the back of the goal, making it 3-2 going into New York's 5th penalty kick. The man to take that kick for New York was Alexander Collins, another member from the Vieira days, another player who has seen the many changes and hardships the club has endured. Finally, after years of playoff losses, hardware slipping from their hands, constant changes with coaches, players, and stadiums, it came down to this moment. One kick could cement this team in history.
FC win. Alexander Callens, and a breakthrough moment for the boys from the Bronx, writing their own history.
And just like that, after all the hardships, after all the years of playoff losses, New York was the MLS Cup champions. After their 2021 MLS Cup win, 2022 saw a different focus for the club compared to previous years. Now that they have achieved their goal quicker than anyone imagined, they turned their focus towards international play. Beginning with their run in the 2022 CONCACAF Champions League, where true to form, they lost in the semifinals to the Seattle Sounders 4-2 on aggregate. However, just because they lost did not mean their chance at international success was over. Due to winning the MLS Cup, they earned the right to compete in the 2022 Campeones Cup against Liga MX champions Atlas. New York was given the home field advantage, and in front of their fans, Callens and Morales scored the only 2 goals of the match, adding an international trophy to New York's growing case. However, as all seemed to be on the rise for New York, many players and staff members left to pursue new opportunities, including Coach Delia leaving for the Belgian League, and star Castellanos was loaned to CFG side Girona 6 weeks into the season. With the new head coach Nick Cushing, NYCFC managed to have a successful campaign, going 16-11-7, but ultimately, that magic from the 2021 season finally ran out, losing to the Philadelphia Union in the Eastern Conference Finals. After all the success that the club had in its first couple of years, 2023 became the worst statistical season the club has ever had. Following the departure of more key players, including Sean Johnson, Alexander Callens, and Max Morales, the club, for the first time in its history, failed to make the MLS Cup playoffs. This included a disastrous stretch that saw the club only win twice across all competition from April to August. However, not all news that came out this year was bad. The club did announce that after 8 years, they were building a permanent home called Etihad Park, set to finish construction in 2027. After the old championship core that brought glory to New York had almost all disappeared, the club realized major changes were needed if they were going to compete again. That offseason, New York spent over $20 million to bring in Jovan Mijatovic, Augustin Ojeda, and many other players to bring new life to the club. However, even with these signings, New York finished 6th in their conference and 13th overall. They did manage to secure a playoff spot, defeating FC Cincinnati in the first round. However, the Eastern Conference semifinals set up the first ever postseason Hudson River Derby between NYCFC and the New York Red Bulls. The much anticipated match, unfortunately, ended in a 2-0 defeat, and New York once again went home trophyless. 3 days after the loss, head coach Nick Cushing was fired and replaced with Pascal Jansen. So that was the history of NYCFC so far. It really took a while for me to be able to put everything together, to do all the editing and everything, the research. I would really appreciate you guys if you could like, comment, share, subscribe, notifications, you know the whole drill. Anyway, hope you all have a great day. Peace out, and comment down below what team I should do next.